On behalf of the South Dakota State University Office of Academic Affairs and the Center for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning, I'm excited to welcome you to the 2020 SDSU Fall Conference. My name is Kevin Sackreiter, and I serve as the Director for the Center for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. Today we have a unique opportunity to share with you some innovative strategies and approaches to the teaching challenges that we face, the social justice challenges that we face, and just a lot of the unknowns that we're going to be encountering this fall. Today, many of the themes that you're going to hear are going to relate to opportunity, breaking through the glass that's in front of us or those mental constraints that we might have about what we can or can't do related to teaching and learning, and finding new opportunities and new ground to successfully impact our students. The opportunity related to many of the social justice issues going on in our world right now to both write and write our own history, write what we want it to be, and write it in a way that supports all of our students. And I think you're going to hear us also focus a lot on SDSU's core values and how this unique opportunity we find ourselves in this fall really speaks to who we are as an institution and specifically who we are as a people-centered institution. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to provide this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you throughout the fall 2020 semester. It's my privilege to introduce to you the Provost of South Dakota State University, Dennis Hedge.
Greetings. Thank you for kicking off our academic year by participating with our annual Fall Conference. Although we are connecting in a different way this year, the SDSU Fall Conference remains one of the most important events we host on our campus. Our Fall Conference is a time for us to come together as a community of educators to learn how to be even stronger at the work we are so passionate about, helping our students learn and be successful. Although this academic year is sure to present many challenges, it also presents many opportunities. Perhaps now more than ever, due to the uncertain times associated with the global pandemic and issues of social justice, our ability to engage and listen to students, motivate them to learn and achieve at the highest of levels, and provide them with a sense of belonging and connection has never been more important. That's why today's Fall Conference, supporting our students in challenging times, is so very important. Before looking further ahead, I do want to reflect back on the past few months. Thank you all for your response to the abrupt transition to remote teaching and learning this past spring. The response of our entire campus community, faculty, staff, students, and administration was and has continued to be fantastic. Together, we kept students on their path toward a degree. We safely moved them from the residence halls. We celebrated the achievements of our graduates with a virtual commencement ceremony, and we have worked to prepare an incoming class of freshmen with a virtual new student orientation. The work we do, educating students, is essential, and our students have expressed a strong desire to return to campus and resume on-campus curricular and co-curricular activities. During this unprecedented time, it is critical that we reaffirm our commitment to access to education, academic programs of the highest quality, and creativity and innovation in our teaching. I often sign my letters to campus with Jackrabbit academic pride. Last year at the Fall Conference, I gave a word for each letter in Jackrabbit to describe what that means to me. They were J, joy. Find joy in our work that we do on campus. A, aspire. Aspire to be great. Our vision is to be premier. C, creativity. Find creative solutions and innovate. K, kind. Be people-centered and kind. R, respect. Respect other viewpoints. A, academic excellence. Commit to quality education. B, bold. Take bold action whenever it is needed. B, believe. Believe in our mission. We do make a difference. I, inclusive. Be inclusive and value community. T, teamwork. Because collectively, we are stronger. Those words and what they stand for, because of current events in the world, are even more relevant than 1 year ago. Thank you for being part of today's important event, and thank you for your commitment to academic excellence.
Thank you, Dennis. It is now my honor to introduce the President of South Dakota State University, Barry Dunn.
Hello, everyone. I am so happy that you have taken the time to join this virtual fall conference. This time is an investment in yourselves and ultimately an investment in our students. As I prepared to become president, I imagined the highs and lows of the job that I might experience, but I never imagined that I would be president of South Dakota State University during a black swan event like a global pandemic, and at the same time, the nation would experience social unrest to the level seen in the 1960s. Make no mistake about it, we are living in transformative times. This fall semester will look different than any other semester in the history of this campus. But what remains unchanged is our commitment to being a premier land-grant university and to offer support to one another during challenging times. Today's program uses the strengths, talents, and professional insights of our own people. Right on this campus, we have an enormous spectrum of knowledge, experience, and expertise. We need to rely on each other to help us navigate this new academic environment. SDSU's core values of people-centered, excellence, diversity, integrity, and creativity have been critical in the decisions we've made and will remain at the forefront of our decisions and actions going forward. When we commit to these core values, we become uniquely equipped to look at the challenges ahead as opportunities and write a better history for ourselves and those we serve. Thank you for your commitment to providing transformative education to the young people of today. I know the work ahead will be challenging. However, please know you are supported and your ongoing work is valuable, transformative, and will have an enormous impact on thousands of lives for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you, President Dunn. I'm now excited to be joined by my colleagues, Cass Williams, Chief Diversity Officer, and Rebecca Bott Knutson, Dean of the Van D. and Barbara B. Fishback Honors College, as we engage in a conversation about the topics relevant to our fall 2020 semester, focusing on teaching, social justice, and supporting our students in this unique learning environment.
This spring, after we shifted to the post-COVID remote learning experience, a team of campus professionals conducted a student survey, and one thing rang true across all responses. Our students are craving connections, and these are the connections that they have come to recognize as a part of that valuable experience here at SDSU. Another thing that we realized from our students is that they had to grow up pretty quickly. They might be dealing with food insecurity or financial instability or caring for ill family members or even know somebody who passed away. Our students are coming of age during a global pandemic, during a time of civil unrest. And it's really critical that we're aware of the many things that are impacting our students' lives and their ability to learn. Our students' voice was clear. They crave connections with you and with each other. So we need to really think as we're preparing for this fall semester, this semester in the era of COVID and a semester with an election at that, how do we break down that plexiglass shield in front of the classroom or reach through our screens to reach students who are learning remotely from us? Let me be very clear. These screens, both real and perceived, are barriers to our students. They resemble the trauma, the conflict, the suffering, and the obstacles that our students have gone through over the past several of months. So it's up to us as jackrabbits and the SDSU professionals to find ways to really connect with our students despite the barriers that might be in our way.
When I think about a culture of learning, one of the things that I really focus on is the relationships that are being built in the classroom, the community that you build in a classroom. I go beyond discipline, I go beyond teacher-student, but I look at what kinds of things do you do to build a culture in your classroom that helps your students feel comfortable learning in that environment. And it doesn't matter if it's face-to-face, online, hybrid. I'm probably known on campus as saying good teaching is good teaching regardless of where it happens. And so as I look at all the different transitions we're going through I kind of default to that idea that if we teach well and we do those things that we know work well for our students, it doesn't matter if I get a call on a Friday and I have to start teaching online on Monday, but I'm using best practices and I've planned for those scenarios, for those best practices that I want to implement. I think one of the things that's really important is really communicating with your students about what your learning goals are for the course. Letting them know why you chose those specific learning objectives that you did and how you're going to work to meet them and support them as they strive to meet those goals. I think another thing that can be really good for class culture is asking your students what do they want to learn in the course. If you talk to them about what they want to learn, oftentimes they know what the course is, they know what the description of the course is. Oftentimes what they tell you they want to learn is going to be very similar to what you have planned, but it gives them some ownership. And I think that ownership, and this is where our course is going, can be really a positive piece that allows students to feel like they're supported, like they're valued in the classroom. I think providing students early feedback so they know how they're doing in a course can be really an important piece as far as setting up a culture where students feel like communication is going to be frequent, that they're going to be supported as they navigate the course, whether they're having successes or having some struggles and need a little more assistance. If they know they can communicate with you, that's going to be important. We always have said that learning students' names is one of those big pieces that in a face-to-face class is absolutely essential. And if the class is so big you don't know all the names, learn some of the names so that you can, students see and perceive that you're trying to know who they are and get to know them a little bit. And I think in this environment we're going into in the fall, whether it's face-to-face, you have half your students there, half of them not, or whatever that percentage looks like, hybrid, online, if you take the time in all of those modalities to get to know your students a little bit and be able to use their names and have that personal aspect, that's such a huge part of class culture. It's going to impact the way the whole class runs, your interactions with them. It's going to provide positive impacts when we get to the end of the semester and students are doing feedback surveys. I think if they feel valued and that they know that you care about them, and knowing their name sends a great sign that you do care about who they are as individuals, that's going to be really an essential component of that. The last piece that I'd share is I think don't be afraid to let your students know who you are as well. We talk about getting to know their names and really you'll hopefully have opportunities for them to share a little bit about who they are, but let them know who you are a little bit as well. And I know for everyone that's kind of a decision. How much information do I want to share with my students? But I think deciding to share a little bit, maybe it's just some of your hobbies. Maybe it's you keep it discipline specific, but you talk about your research interests or things that you've done in the field. We often talk about sharing with students how when you were in a course similar to the one that they're taking, you found ways to be successful. And I think sharing those types of tips can be really helpful. I know when I'm teaching classes, I probably share more about the activities my kids are doing and those sort of things. And that's something I'm comfortable with. But I do find that helps me build a relationship. Students seem to enjoy learning about us as people a little bit. And again, everybody has to decide how much do you want to share. But as we talk about building culture, it's those relationship things. It's sharing the why of your course. Why did you make the teaching and learning decisions that you did? And how are you going to support your students as they strive to be successful? Letting them, again, going back to what I maybe mentioned earlier, and being human. And show that human side, treat each other with that humanness that we're not just a faculty member and a student, but we're all learning here together, and we're going to be successful together. And I'm going to support you as your faculty member as you work through this course. I think all of that can be really vital to helping students be successful.
I think it starts at the beginning. It's how we set the tone. It's by the message that the president will give to the campus community. But I don't think it's just at that particular level. I think it's also in the classroom. I always advise the faculty to use their syllabus statement as setting the tone for the semester. In the syllabus statement, and I always say as well, is that it's a contract between you and the student. And with any contract, you can renegotiate it. So how do you use your students to be a part of setting that tone? And then as the semester goes on, how do you remind them of what we all agreed upon is what's going to be the tone for the semester? Strategies I like to use, and I'm old school in a lot of ways, is to go back to history and see what history tells us. We have been in this space before in different ways and different versions. We've seen Katrina, we've seen the Vietnam War, we've seen all these spaces happening, but for our students right now, they are firsthand witnesses of two things happening at one time. So you have a pandemic and you have civil unrest. And for me, to be a witness of all this that's happening, it's important that we understand where we stand in history. And we are now seeing how we can see this as an opportunity to write our history, to document our history, to frame this for our future students. But also when I say write, I also mean in the sense of changing direction. It is our responsibility to write what's happening right now. You look at, sustainability differently. You look at the environment differently. You look at your friends differently and through a different lens. How do we write that history for future generations? It's important. And a lot of times, and I look at Katrina, I look at how the Civil Rights Act came out, the legislative, all that impacted higher education and how things were different. And I even go back and look at ADA and some of those policies. It used to be a big issue to put handicap accessible doors in all the buildings. It used to be an issue to have automatic doors, but aren't we fortunate we have them now? We see it differently. So how do we shape what our future is going to look like and not see this as an issue as far as not being progressive? That's the expectation of higher education. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, but we're also here to give back. That's so important for our students to understand the space that we're in. This is an opportunity to continue that service. There's this thing we always say in higher education as we're working with students, meet students where they are. And to me that sounded great for a while, but there's also a power dynamic in saying that statement. Why is where you are the wrong place to be? Why can't we just be in that space with that person or with that student? Because when we're in that space, we're also learning what's needed for everybody to be in that space. And right now, we're all in that space. We're not meeting anybody in this space because the thing, if we're not listening to our students, if we're not listening to each other, there's no progress in that space. So I've changed my languaging from saying meeting students where they are, meeting people where they are. I'm honored that you allowed me in your space so we can share this space.
So how do we connect with students and how do we connect in these changing times? The fact is that we already have a vehicle that's filled up and ready to take us on the road to success in connecting this semester, and that's the Common Read. The Campus and Community Common Read at SDSU began 12 years ago, and the goal of this program is to create connections, to help us to think deeply about ourselves and the world around us, and to expand our minds, all while creating community. And that's among students, staff, faculty, people who live on campus and beyond campus. Truly an effort to unite people in feeling good about the community that they're a part of. The 2020 Common Read is There by Tommy Orange. This text features themes of truth, healing, exploration, relationships, and empowerment. How very fitting are those themes for our lives today. So There actually focuses on the perspective of Native American experiences from urban places, urban locations. This was happening in California, and that's not necessarily the experience of the Native Americans that live in our communities. So the novel itself is a starting point to begin to learn from characters in the book, and then to lead towards conversations, learning about each other. I encourage you to use these themes in the text as a launching point to start conversations with underserved or underrepresented students and staff and colleagues from across campus, and also to explore how the pandemic is impacting our students. The strategy and the success behind the Common Read every year is the fact that the text which is selected speaks not only to whatever population or issues are covered in that text, but that those issues can be extrapolated. Those themes that I mentioned before, those can help us to be mindful of establishing inclusive excellence at SDSU and beyond as we think about the pandemic, as we think about current events, as we think about our professions, and as we think about social justice. Encourage all of us to engage in the 2020 Common Read. Those themes of truth, healing, exploration, relationships, and empowerment, you have to try hard not to incorporate those into your classes, even if you're not teaching the Common Read. Think about how these themes are ever present as we navigate current events, as we've been nimble and adjusting to the global pandemic. Also, how do they present themselves within your discipline? Making those kinds of connections with your students in your classroom, regardless of whether or not you're making specific reference to there, that's a powerful way to have a common conversation inside and out of the class, establishing many points of connection for our students.
I've mentioned earlier, the importance of building relationships and class culture, and I focused a lot on students and instructor, but I think that community concept, when you focus on the students in your classroom, is going to be really important. I think it's easy in this situation to get focused on, I need to teach this amount of content. But I think if we don't focus on the students and the reality of the world that we live in, the social justice issues that are prevalent in our country right now, and realize that those issues aren't going to stay outside of our classroom. We need to be prepared to have those conversations and support our students as individuals, no matter what their perspectives are, and support them as individuals and allow that conversation to happen. And so I think prioritizing, regardless of discipline, prioritizing community and figuring out ways to allow that community to be built. I think that idea of instructors knowing student names, giving students opportunities to have some kind of get to know you conversations is going to be really a vital piece of what allows us to build successful communities and really acknowledge the differences that are in the room and allow those conversations that are important to working through those differences to happen. And so I'd encourage initially in a course opportunities for community building. Just even if it's a brief 10-minute, go into a Zoom breakout room and share one thing that you did over this summer break that was unusual because of the restrictions placed on you by COVID, is going to lead to a lot of conversation because there's a commonality there. The students will all have gone through this together and they can share things and start to get to know each other as individuals. And so I think building those relationships amongst your students, again, regardless of discipline or type of course, is going to be really an essential piece to helping that to be successful. I think also being really intentional about strategies that you're using in the room. I know one of the things that I worry about is I think having cameras in the room to provide those opportunities for students who can't be there is going to be really important, and it's a great decision and strategy. But if we just rely on that as, okay, my students aren't here, I'm going to lecture, it's going to be recorded, they'll get the information, we're doing a real disservice to teaching and learning. And so I think having those the cameras there and being able to share both have a live audience and an audience that's either synchronous or asynchronous, however they choose to view it, but building in engagement opportunities, whether in a synchronous situation, you can have students who are viewing the course, have some sort of a chat discussion together, or maybe in an asynchronous setting, setting up a discussion board where they can apply the knowledge that you're talking about is going to be a piece that I think we really have to consider and really think about, how am I going to do that? If we were in a face-to-face class, it'd be easy. I would just throw some questions out to my audience, they turn to a partner and have the conversation. And I can still do that with the third of my class who's there, for example. But what about the 2/3 or the other group that's not in the room? And I think being thoughtful about that, not viewing the camera as the end-all solution, but as a step towards what we need teaching and learning to be. And that's engagement and application, where our students can really have conversations with one another. And that's where community is going to come in. And that's where giving them opportunities to talk about their perspectives, their differences, their similarities, all of that will come up if we provide that community opportunity for our students. And so I think that's one of the great strategies that we can use to support our students, is continue to look for opportunities for them to interact, to know each other, and to talk. by applying the content to their own lives. And that application is going to give them opportunities to share perspectives, and I think it's going to really go a long ways towards letting us bridge some of those gaps that I think we can more easily do in a face-to-face setting. We just have to be more intentional about it when we maybe don't have that ideal environment. And I think we have the tools in place to be able to do that and do that quite well.
Get rid of normal. Whether it's new or old, let's embrace a new better. This is such an opportunity, if we approach it that way, for us to really broaden our horizons and how we're approaching higher education, how we are teaching in and out of the classroom, how we are approaching discovery and service. So there are many opportunities here that we can find, and those are gems. So in the classroom, I wouldn't advocate that anybody starts designing their class over again from scratch. That's not what I'm asking for. But I do think that in order to make this fun for you, if you're teaching in the classroom or as a professional who is developing co-curricular programming, what's something that you've been thinking about that you've always wanted to give a try and you just never took that initiative? Now's the time. Students are used to us changing our ways during COVID. They are nimble and flexible, and I bet that if you told them about your idea, they'd be delighted to be partners in helping to innovate that path forward. So we can create these win-win experiences and partnerships with our students. Take advantage of that opportunity.
Students have been talking to us for a while. Are we listening? The country has been talking to us for a while. Are we listening? I make the joke, I still need to get rid of my MySpace account. It's still there. It's out there somewhere. But now we're in the era of Zoom. It's new. It's different. And for a lot of us who are faculty and staff, it was a thrust in the atmosphere for us. Okay, how do we hurry up and do this? But students have already been there. I was in one classroom environment, and the student was working with the teacher to make sure the technology was correct. That's that listening piece, that respecting piece. This is the students' time. They're going to make change. They're going to create change. And we're here to facilitate that particular process and changing. Collaboration. And I think I call it the creative collaboration in moving forward. One person may have a suggestion, another person may have a suggestion, but always go to that piece about synergy. Sometimes we think 1 + 1 = 2, but sometimes if it's synergized, 1 + 1 can equal 3. We're in a different space. I appreciate Zoom in a lot of ways because it has that closed captioning piece. I appreciate Zoom in a lot of ways because when I finally do get to see the person, it's a different experience. You're speaking with people at a different and sometimes a deeper level than just what we're used to doing. I'm not trying to age myself, but back in the day, to say when you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Change happened, right? When you cough or sneeze, put it in your elbow. Some people weren't doing that. So now we're going to put on a mask. Times call for change to happen. And I go back to even a little bit on history with Dr. King. He was asked to be a part of a movement, and he turned it down several times. He didn't want to do it. He was only 20, 23 when all this was happening. But the times call for certain leadership. And you don't need one person to be that leader. It's everybody being a part of that process.
As I look at the opportunities that this fall semester provides, and really I go back to March, I was guilty of saying we have some really unique opportunities now for growth. I think that's the piece that I'm most excited about. I know that it's challenging, and I know I've worked with a lot of our faculty over the past 4 months, and I know the challenges that exist, and I know where there's stressors and things that we just don't know answers to. Even now, a couple days before the semester starts, we just don't know the answers. But I've really been inspired watching our faculty work through those problems, those challenges, and the excitement that comes when you work through the challenge and maybe you have that kind of epiphany moment and you look at this new strategy you're going to try and you see the possibilities that this might not be a one-time strategy. This is a strategy that could change how you've taught a course for 5, 10 years, and now you're being challenged in a way that forces you to make some decisions that really can change powerfully how learning happens in your classroom. And I think we have so many tools available that can help faculty with that. We have open educational resources, as I know I've mentioned a number of times, but I think taking the time to just reach out to a librarian, reach out to a member of CETL, let us help you find a resource, because I really am convinced that we can find an OER resource for almost any course that we teach at SDSU that is either a strategy, a lesson, an activity. We can go as far as textbooks. Those might be a little more challenging for some courses, but there's so many peer-reviewed open educational resources out there that I think that can be a really powerful tool. I think thinking about the innovative technologies that we've talked about, the powerful capabilities of things such as Zoom and the different tools that are within Zoom can really allow you to rethink how you present content to students. Don't just, not just recording yourself. We'd encourage folks to, if you do a recording, keeping it short, keeping it concise, and then providing lots of application opportunities for your students so that they can continue to engage with you, engage with one another, apply content. We know that application, research shows us, the opportunities to apply content, whether it's in a face-to-face course or an online course or somewhere in between, that opportunity to apply content where the instructor stops lecturing, stops talking to the students, and gives them opportunities to process. That's where the learning happens. And so as we look at the innovative opportunities with our cameras that we've installed in the classroom, I think that's another piece that I would really emphasize is they're great tools. They're going to allow us to stay connected to all of our students, but we can't rely on them just as a content delivery medium. We have to think about ways that we can deliver our content through that camera, but still provide engagement and processing opportunities for our students. And maybe it's simply asking a question and pausing for a couple seconds or a minute and letting them write and reflect on the question that you've asked them. Maybe it's having a chat window open and giving students opportunities to chat with one another, or a discussion board via D2L, or all kinds of other strategies that we can work through and kind of come up with you. That's really what CETL, Instructional Design Services, all of our offices are here to do, is help you find tools that allow you to engage your students. And so we can do all of those things to help you be successful in your classrooms. But I think those are some of those really great opportunities. We rolled out a Preparing Courses for Fall 2020 D2L shell. And within that D2L shell, we talk about preparing courses for transition, inclusion and equity conversations. We have student interviews where students are sharing their perspective on teaching and learning. We have some faculty interviews from a number of our faculty mentors that we used in this summer's Course Enhancement Institute, sharing how they're preparing for fall. And we feel like that's been a really powerful tool. We have well over 130 faculty as of July 31st enrolled in that course, and I think that number is going to continue to enroll, and it's self-paced and it's optional. But one of the things we're really excited about is we're going to continue to keep that opportunity open, and we're going to transition that from a preparing for fall to being successful in navigating fall 2020 resource page. One of the things we're going to be providing to every department and college on campus, and it's probably more at the department level, is we're going to be providing a menu of 15-minute, what we call spark shops, where we will pop into a department meeting via Zoom and we'll facilitate a 15-minute teaching and learning conversation. We won't take any more than 15 minutes. We've done these for a number of departments in the past face-to-face, and I think they can attest to the fact that we are in the room and we're leaving the room at the 15-minute mark. So you can carry on with the business that you have, but allows each department to have a very departmental specific teaching and learning conversation on what I would say are general but very important teaching and learning topics. And so faculty and department heads especially should look for that coming out, that menu where they can pick a programming option, and we'll just join their departmental meeting, and I think that can be a really powerful opportunity for our university. The other piece that I'd really like to share with our faculty is, I know we've received a lot of questions about what are observations, what are mid-semester reviews going to look like? And while I might not have a lot of really specific answers today, what I can tell you is that we're looking at some very innovative approaches to our observation program, to our mid-semester review program.
I'm totally excited about a program we call the Differences Dialogue. So we bring together students, faculty, and staff with different voices. No one comes in with a title, but we are going to speak very detailed about what equity and access looks like for our students. So it's a 4 to 6 week program where we commit to coming together every week and speaking about diversity, inclusion, equity, and access. But I think at this point now, I think the students are going to lead the discussion, but it'll be frameworked around what equity looks like for our students.
We'll be hosting a series of Common Read signature events. You can come to those in person, or you can come to, we'll be social distancing, of course. You can also attend these remotely. I encourage everybody, come to one, participate in all of them. We'll be learning in community.
Thank you, Becky and Cass. It's always a pleasure to be able to engage with you on conversations related to effective teaching and learning and supporting student success at South Dakota State University. Thank you to our faculty for joining us today and engaging in our Fall 2020 Fall Conference experience. And now, to wrap up our Fall Conference, I'd like to welcome back Provost Dennis Hedge.
I hope you've enjoyed today's programming. Although the past few months have been difficult, they've been affirming in regard to knowing my why. As I said in my introductory remarks, what we do is essential. Our work on this campus makes a difference and makes our world a better place. As we start classes, I ask that you all reflect on knowing your why. The work you do at South Dakota State University will be impactful. Let's do what we can to make this year great.